Hello, and welcome to the How2Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. Hello and welcome to the How2Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Jenny Sutter. She is the market president for FranNet. I want to thank you for having being on the show today, and I'm excited what we're going to talk about. And it's something we haven't talked about on the show yet. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So I'm going to start with you, where I start with everybody. Kind of, how did you get into this space? What is your origin story? Why franchising?
Yeah, so I actually, I went to college, got my business degree with a focus in marketing, and I actually used my degree right out of college. I started working for a restaurant corporation, a national restaurant chain, as a marketing manager for them. Did that for about 3.5 years. It was a great, right out of college job, honestly. And then after that, I went on to doing marketing for a med spa chain. So I went from burgers to laser hair removal, which, but marketing is marketing. So I did that I was with that company for just over 12 years. So I was with them for quite a long time. During that duration of being, in the corporate world, I got married, I had kids, and my lifestyle just changed. The things I wanted in life, the way my day looked, I wanted it to change. I was traveling a lot, I was working late, and I didn't really have time to go to my kids' little school parades or, be the classroom mom that I wanted to be. So I realized I really needed change. I was getting really burnt out. So when I thought about that, I thought, okay, what does change look like? I could get another job somewhere, but honestly, that would look exactly the same, just different color, wallpaper on the walls. So I didn't want to do that. I could start my own business, and that wasn't something I really was interested in doing. With my marketing background, being a marketing consultant just seemed like it wouldn't be a better lifestyle for me, quite frankly. And then I thought, well, I could, what about a franchise? Because I was familiar with franchises. Both the med spa chain and the restaurant chain that I was with were both franchises. And so I was on the other end of franchising. I was on the support side of franchise. So I knew with a franchise that if you follow the system, it can work. And so I thought, well, why don't I just turn a whole new leaf and do something completely different and, search out franchises. So I did. I started looking for different franchise opportunities that were out there. I did what most people do, and I Googled the best franchise I'm in the Tampa Bay area. So I Googled best franchises in Tampa Bay, and lots of things popped up. So I quickly got pretty overwhelmed, started researching some opportunities that were out there that didn't make a whole lot of sense for me based on what I did want my lifestyle to look like. And luckily I did find a franchise consultant to help me and navigate through, what opportunities are out there that exist in the franchise world that are available, that are within my investment range, that would check my boxes for my lifestyle goals. And so started researching different franchises, working with her. Turns out she was retiring, and FranNet is a franchise. So FranNet was one of the franchise opportunities she did present to me. And I guess you probably know the end of the story there. That's how I am where I am now, being a franchise consultant. I now help people who are in a similar place as me, looking for franchise opportunities, find the options that are out there that make sense for them.
A lot of the mentors and stuff that we use in the acquisition entrepreneur space, they kind of lean against away from franchises. They say, no, don't do that, go that. But what I've found, and this is the reason I agreed to and wanted you on the show, is what I found is a lot of the people that do those courses, we talked about this a little bit before the show, they just don't have operational experience. They've never They might have been a great employee for a while, and maybe yeah, they actually helped document some systems and processes, but they've never had like a P&L responsibility, a profit and loss responsibility at a company. They've never had like ownership of something like that. And for one thing, I think this is one of the things the coaches and the mentors will say is like find companies that have great systems and processes. Well, you got that. Find systems that have you know a proven market. So a lot of it checks a lot of the boxes, and you don't necessarily have to. This is a one of the myths that's probably out there, right? You don't have to necessarily buy one that's like and build a building and start your own, right? There's a market for ones that exist.
Right.
Owners are retiring, doing something else, and are for sale. So I wanted to chat about some of that, like what is different from just buying your mom and pop, construction company and buying a franchise.
Well, for one, with a franchise, like you mentioned, they have systems and structure in place. So they are a proven process for, getting into business and staying into business. They've already made the mistakes. They've already, figured out which POS system that needs to be involved or CRM system that needs to be involved, the technology stack, without having to do a lot of trial and error there. They have coaches that and mentors that they have for you, so that if you do have a question about something or can't figure out how to navigate something, you have a resource to reach out to. There's training that they provide to you. So I don't want to say it's as simple as a business in a box, but there's a lot of resources that you have, at your disposal with a franchise, and they give you that pathway for getting into business and staying in business, if you should go the route of buying an existing one, or if you are to kind of start one from ground up.
The other thing is a lot of people think, well, the reason that and I get some of the extent why the mentors and coaches say stay away, but it's because I get it. I don't necessarily know if I agree with it. One of the interesting things is that there's this misconception out there that you can't grow through acquisition, and that's a big strategy they teach. Buy your competitors, buy your suppliers, and that stuff. The suppliers would probably be out in the franchise, but you can certainly buy out other similar and um, franchises in the space. So you'll talk about like what are the different growth strategies? Is it buying multiple locations? What are the growth strategies available to somebody who's wanting to do acquisition entrepreneurship, but starting the franchising because it has a lot of those boxes checked?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that people grow utilizing a franchise to grow. First and foremost, there are franchises where there's high growth opportunity. So think of kind of some you know first to market franchises that are out there where the growth opportunity is huge, and you buy multiple territories or multiple units. So you can grow with the same existing franchise, and having multiple units, and that's a way to build your business and growth opportunity. Another way is to buy multiple different kinds of franchises. So it's not uncommon for people that are in, let's say, a home services franchise to then invest in a different home services franchise, because now they have crossover clientele and they can cross market to each other. So it's a complementary business opportunity. So there's different ways, different growth strategies. Depends on the availability in the market for that particular franchise, of course. But most people, depending on the kind of franchise, don't always invest in just a single unit. They invest in multiples if that's what they're looking for, is growth.
There's also the opportunity to grow through having systems and processes to run your business a different way. The one I'm thinking of in mind is I had a guy who presented to me a franchise. I didn't know it was a franchise when it presented. I probably would have not listened as far as I did. My fallacy, not my bad. But it was a mobile tire repair. The only reason I knew it existed is I had a blowout, uh, and when I towed my truck to the farm, which is 27 miles away from anything out there in Oklahoma. Anyway, when I towed it to the farm, I guess I had damaged the back rear wheel also. So not only did I have one flat, which I had spare for it, it was just too late to want to change it. I had a blowout at like 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like I'm just calling tow truck, take this home. I'm going to go home and lay down. And so I go outside and there's two flat tires. I'm like, okay, now what I do? So I started calling around my mobile mechanic, guy I have come fix my car. I'm too busy to go drop my cars off at the shop. I make them come to me and fix it there. So I have a mobile mechanic. So I call him and I say, hey, could you come out and bring a couple Jackson Jack stands. I need to come all the way out to my farm, and this was going to get expensive. I said, pull off two of my tires, take them into town, and get them fixed, and bring them back, put them back on. He says, I have a buddy who owns a mobile tire repair. He actually has a truck, and you tell him the size of the tires, he just brings the tires and brings them on and puts them on your farm. He's done. So when he did that, I was really, kind of intrigued. And I said, if you ever think to sell this thing, I mean, I'd like to talk to you. It's kind of cool. And he goes, well, I'm not the owner, but the owners are wanting to retire. They bought this recently and decided that they don't want to do it. So I ended up talking to him, found out it was a franchise, and I kind of backed, and it was only doing about 100K a year.
Yeah.
That's a job.
Yep.
And but I talked to him, and I went down and I I don't think that ever it got sold, to who I presented it to. But there were two guys I know that had shops where they did tire repair. I said, hey man, you got to just buy into this franchise because you're local, and sometimes people call you. I know you get calls all the time. Hey, can you send somebody out or something? You should buy this franchise, get 2 or 3 vans, do everything here, but also have the ability for the upscale seller services. Like, hey, you want us to come out to your place or your work and change your tires? We can do that too. And that would be a brilliant growth strategy. So I think there's some stuff inside of there. If you look at them, like if you had let me think of another one. Uh, I'm in the real estate space, home services, right?
Sure.
If I have friends right now, they have a ton of Airbnbs, you know, buying a Molly Maid franchise is probably not a bad idea for him, right? He's constantly having to have something cleaned, like, spur of the moment. And that's the biggest problem he has is cleaners not showing up in that little gap he has before even booking, so he has to go out and clean his own places. So, what about those type of growth strategies? Have you helped people with that before?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's, so in the franchise world,
Hmm.
especially with a home service, usually you are investing in a territory. So, maybe it's a county, a series of zip codes, a number of of households that meet your, criteria, but you usually have, a territory. And so your first growth strategy is, of course, to maximize that territory because, so that might mean multiple vehicles. So let's say in a home service, residential cleaning service like a Molly Maid or Home Clean Heroes or one of those, you're going to want multiple vehicles on the road. So that's your initial growth strategy is to, market enough to saturate your initial territory in order to grow your business. And then your secondary growth strategy is to invest in multiple territories. So now you just continue to have more and more vehicles on the road. You're maximizing your marketing spend and you're maximizing the employees because you're able to tap into the same employees to do different jobs. So that's a kind of that's the kind of growth strategy that a lot of people look at is starting with one, growing that, and expanding beyond there so that you can tap into the resources that are already existing.
Yeah, I just thought of something. What about a franchise that starts out? Do you get any franchises out there? They're young franchises. What I'm thinking of. They've got 6 or 8 locations, and the reason I'm thinking about this is during the marketing roll up last year, we were working on one of the marketing agencies had franchised. They had 7 or 8 locations. And as part of what we were doing, we were going to actually just acquire the whole bunch, right? With the master franchise. I forget what's that called. Is that what it's called? The
Yeah, yeah, it's usually called a master franchise.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we were going to acquire them, and then he owned some of the locations. He bought them back, and but do you come across that where a franchise has started? They got 6 or 8 locations, and now they're considering selling the whole package.
Oh yeah. So there's there's different ways to invest in a franchise, and some franchise organizations have what's called a master franchise or an area developer. That's another way where they'll sell an entire market, let's say. So again, I'm in Tampa, they might sell the Tampa market as an area development master franchise deal. The goal of that master franchise owner is to then find other franchisees underneath them to, let's say Tampa, for instance, can hold 7 or 8 different franchise locations or territories, whatever that is, underneath them, to find, different franchisees underneath them. So they're making a piece of the pie, right? They're making a percentage of the percentage.
Right.
So that's one way that that's one option in franchising, is to be kind of that empire builder, or to own multiple as a master, to own the multiples and then sell off the multiples once they're already up and running, because then it becomes more of a resale. It's a thriving business, hopefully, and so it becomes something that is more resellable. So two different ways as a master franchise that people go about doing that.
What about buying? I think more what I was looking for is buying the franchise, or right, the actual
Yeah.
parent company that, like that's what we were doing. We weren't buying a master franchise in that realm that you were talking about. We were buying the franchise, the parent company,
Yeah.
right? And then, looking to like own the offices and actually use the offices to upsell other, marketing services from all these other companies we are acquiring. So do you come across that very often where, you know somebody started to franchise their business, they've got so many, maybe 10, 15 different locations, but the franchise owner is willing to sell the entire, like, company?
Sure. I mean, private equity comes in, VC companies come in. There are a lot of franchise organizations that are under umbrellas, right?
Right.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Neighborly, for instance. It's probably the biggest one, has a lot of home services franchise. I mean, they have probably 15 to 20 different franchise organizations underneath them. How do they do that? They buy out other, companies that have started to franchise and say, hey, we'll buy your franchise because it makes sense to bring in under our umbrella, complement it, and we're going to systematize it in the way that we've done it with everything else. So, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, we see that, and it comes in a variety of different ways. Usually, it's a bigger franchise organization that's buying a smaller one, or private equity comes in quite a bit too with franchises.
So most of my listeners, including myself, we operate in a space that's just below that private equity line, right? So the private equity, and they're kind of crawling into our space right now, but usually private equity is kind of interested in companies doing revenue of 25 million and above, and EBITDAs of at least 2 to 3 million. Most of them are at that 5 to 10 million or more. So we operate, a lot of the people I talk to, and a lot of people listed on the show, operate in that layer just below it for the sole purpose, and to be honest, 100% honest, with the intent that within 2 or 3 years we'll be in their range, and then if we want to sell, we can sell at a higher multiple to them,
Yep.
right? So there's an arbitrage game you can play inside of this world. A lot of people don't know that, once you hit a certain number, the multiple, what the value of the company, not does it go up a little bit, it goes up another multiple. So you might sell a sub $1 million profitable company in profits, EBITDA, or sell a discretionary earnings for 3x of that multiple. And if you can get it over 10 million, the PE starts coming in, you might sell it for 10, you're not 10, maybe 8, 9, sometimes 10 or 11 if it's like certain very, very limited industries. So now you've, significantly increased your value. Um, let's talk about the franchise side of this. How do you help a guy like myself? What would you ask me if you're trying to figure out what type of franchise fits me?
Yeah. So I take my clients through a process, because if they're not willing to follow my process, they're probably not going to be willing to follow a franchise process. So that's kind of step one, number one,
Uh, That's
in
probably
figuring
why
out
I'm not in them, is I don't like following other people's rules very well. So
they're
you
not for
got me.
everyone.
You got me.
Yep, they're not for everyone. That's for sure.
So
So I do take them through a series of steps. First and foremost, being FranNet specifically has a proprietary profiling tool that we use. It's much like DISC or Myers Briggs, in the sense of it's honing in on kind of who you are, what makes you tick. Specifically for FranNet, it's what value systems do you have, what motivates you, what leadership style, work style. So there's an assessment that I have my clients take. It does not come out with, here's the, perfect franchises for Ron. It's not going to do that, but it does get me some insight into what drives them. So that's kind of step number one. Next step being, we do sit down and have, a pretty in-depth, deep dive, conversation. Everything revolved around lifestyle, goals, money, everything, such as, what are your goals in the short term? Where do you want to be, 20 years from now? And what does retirement look like to you? What does your exit plan look like? And, I'm also going to talk to you about what kinds of industries do you like? What kinds of things do you want to avoid? What do you want your day to look like? How many hours do you want to contribute into the business? Employees, what do you want your employees to look like? Are they skilled, unskilled, part-time, full-time, salary, hourly? Some people don't even know, or they don't care, and that's fine. But some people are very specific about what they're looking for. So I do a deep dive conversation. We call it building a business model, that helps me then come back to my clients with, here's these options they're available in whatever area that you're in, because that's another part of the equation too, is how much can I afford, and is it even available? Because just because you see it, as soon as you see it, usually it's not available, put it that way. I get a lot of folks that are like, oh, I've never heard of that franchise before. And I'm like, well, if you've heard of it, it's probably not available. So, I help kind of navigate through what's available, and, by just deep diving into what their wants and needs are.
Awesome. So you said something important during there. What the type of people you want to work around. A lot of people overstep that, and it was one of my guests on there. He had a really deep story, and I'll give you the synopsis of it, the high level review of it. Wall Street type, banker type, suit tie, three-piece suit. Really formal type. Buys a semi-retires, buys a moving company. And if you think about in most big cities, who works for moving companies? Typically, it's ex-cons, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
They pass a background check barely, and but it's it's a very laborious manual labor job, and this particular one was it was a group of people who that's what they hired. Basically, they had a program. They worked with parole officers, and they hired parolees. Well, the Wall Street type gets in there, and he cannot. He's used to managing in a he buys this franchise, moves their office because it was a warehouse looking thing with to one that has this beautiful like big conference table oak and
Of
stuff like
course.
that he's used to. He shows up in his suit and tie and tries to have meetings with all his workers, and they pretty much, to be honest, they ran over him and ate him alive. He ended up coming back to the broker a few years, like within a year or so, and sold it back. It just wasn't. It's really important that you can manage the culture that the company provides, all right, or is used to. I turned away an engineering company in Texas after learning that the manager that was run it forever manages by kicking trash cans, screaming, and yelling at everybody. I don't do that. I don't know how to hire people that do that. And anybody that's been working there, he's like, my employees have been here for 15 years. Anybody that works there that long needs it. And it's not a culture I can support or know how to manage. So I just couldn't go any further. So it's really important that I'm interested. How does that play in franchise? Like, if you're buying into a franchise and you're not very good with managing, I'd say teens and youth and stuff. What other culture things? Culture. I can't even speak today. Cultural things um, come into play when you're thinking about different types of franchises.
Well, lots of different aspects. So, like, employees, cultural, who are you willing to manage? What does that look like? Really asking them. Sometimes most people have not thought about that. When I ask them, what kinds of employees are you looking for? Like, what do you mean? And so we talk about that. Like, can you imagine yourself managing high school kids, or managing senior citizens, or, managing people that have a different skill set than you do, or unskilled versus skilled, like, what you really think about that a little bit. And, not to mention, how many employees are you comfortable with? If you're not, comfortable with lots of employees, then that kind of the business that you're looking for is different than one that requires a lot of employees. So definitely employees come into that play. I also think it's important to understand the culture of the franchise organization that you're now going to align yourself with. I think that's very important. So when you're going through the research process of, is this franchise make any sense for me? Not only are you interviewing them, they're interviewing you. So the great franchises, they have no problems raising their hand saying, you know what, I don't think you're a good fit for our organization. I actually admire that when they do it, because it means that they're building a certain kind of culture. But as from a potential candidate franchisee standpoint, interview them on what their culture is. You got to talk to their leadership, and do you feel similar to what their values are and their views on things? Talk to other franchise owners. I don't ever let my clients move forward with a franchise without talking to people who are actually doing it day in, day out. How do you feel about them? Do you feel similar to them? So I think, that's one great thing with a franchise, is you do have that opportunity to kind of vet the culture of the company up front. Now you're going to create your own culture too, right? It is your business, your franchise, but it is important that it comes from top down as well.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about. So we talked about the culture there and like the people you're going to be managing and stuff. Um, I think there's at least I have this preconceived notion that the franchises do things the way the franchises do them, and it's a cookie cutter, and you have to do it exactly that way. I know there are some very strict ones, right?
Oh yeah.
I know somebody who has a friend of the friend. Their part time job is they're kind of a secret shopper. They work for franchise companies and they travel from store to store and check things that are not in compliance. So like they have like gigs with Subway and some of the ones like that, and they'll show up, and if you got different art on the walls, you're violation of
Right.
the culture or their rules. Are there other franchises that are kind of just pretty a lot more wide open than that?
Oh yeah, they come in all spectrums. Honestly, there are definitely the hyper strict. It's their way or the highway. Like everything down to the T. The Big M is one of those, right?
Yep.
Like you're not going to be having different art on the walls, short of them pre-approving it because it's within their brand and they've created it. But then there's other franchise organizations that aren't as strict that way, because it doesn't matter either to who their end consumer is, or they want the franchise owners to take on more responsibility and feel more at home with their business. So there's a spectrum of them, which is part of the vetting process, by the way, that I talk through with my clients. Like, how compliant can you be, or do you want to be? And if you're not a very compliant person, that isn't something that you're willing to do, then you're going to need a looser system, maybe a newer franchise where you can help with kind of creating the kind of culture that you like to. But if they are a super compliant person, that can be a little bit of a red flag too, because they do need to run a business after all. And so, but I would know if they're, somebody, if I find them to be a super compliant person, they do need a really strict system. So that, again, that's part of the vetting system. It is part of the process when you're looking at franchise organizations and vetting them against each other of what's a fit for you. You have to find the right fit.
So, me owning a McDonald's franchise and me thinking, would never work because I'm the kind of the guy that goes, "Oh, you're willing to give me grandma's recipe? I've got a fryer and you got some chicken. Where's that at? Let's try this." Right? And you just can't do that with most of them, right? There's just boundaries inside of there. That's okay. Talk about uh, a lot of people think that the franchise owner comes into play and dictates prices when you sell and stuff. How does it work when you decide I'm ready to retire and you want to sell a franchise now? Um, is there like do you have to go back through the franchise? I know the franchise has to approve the new buyer, but explain that process because I know nothing about it. So
Yeah, ironically, that's very widely varied as well, from franchise to franchise. You're exactly right. One of the criteria is that the franchise organization would need to approve whoever the buyer is. So that's definitely comes into play. But it's other than that, sometimes the franchise organization will want you to go through them in order to resell the business. Sometimes they're like, you're on your own. Tell us when you have a buyer. But there always is going to be some transferable things that are going to need to happen when you're reselling a franchise. So that means that the new buyer is going to have to pay some sort of franchise fee, most likely. And if there are kind of the brokers in the group involved, maybe they have to pay a broker, that as well. So that can come into play, but it is much like selling any other business, with the exception of there is that extra layer of the franchise organization being involved, needing that approval. How they, whether the franchise will be involved in the sale, highly involved or not involved at all, is really up to the franchise organization, and that highly varies.
So there's no what is the word I'm looking for? There's nobody going to say, okay, you've got a McDonald's friend. McDonald's is a bad example because they're expensive and very controlling, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind. So you have a McDonald's franchise in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? And you're ready to sell it. McDonald's isn't going to come to you and go, well, McDonald's franchises sell for $1.5 million in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's your price, right? They don't do. I mean, are they gonna? Is there
Not
a
unless it's in their agreement. But usually, yeah, usually that's not going to be the part of it. Again, different franchises are different.
oh,
So, and then there's also some franchises where they are more profit share than they are, a sellable business. So keep that in
mhm.
mind too. So like the Chick-fil-A's of the world, you can't sell that business. It's not a sellable business. When you own a Chick-fil-A, they own it essentially, and you're making a profit share from it. So when you're ready to retire, you essentially have to walk away, and Chick-fil-A is responsible for finding the new owner.
You can't buy one either. You got to go over there and serve Chick-fil-A for a couple of years and earn your way into their
Oh
system.
yeah,
It's
it's
really
a very that
interesting.
talk about culture, right? Like that that is a very culture heavy organization, for a reason, and it shows, right? But it isn't your typical franchise where anyone in the world can buy one, and there's lots of availability. It's a different beast for sure.
So I usually ask people like, tell me something you wish you'd have known that you know now you wish you'd have known before you started. But I'm going to switch that question around just a little bit on you. What is something you know now that you help owners with now that you learned because you just it wasn't like day one they didn't tell you, hey, this you got to get this information from the owner, or the seller or the buyer. But after some time now, you're like, wait a second, I need this and this because it works better if I have it. Is there anything in your space now that's kind of acquired knowledge that anybody considering going down your path would need to know?
Well, I think first and foremost from my client side,
Hmm.
I go straight into the capital. How much capital, how well capitalized are they, how comfortable are they with the investment? So really understanding what is their funding source. Are they self funding? Are they getting loans? What does that look like? What could they be approved for? So I didn't write, when I first started doing this, it's kind of tricky to talk to people about money. So that was intimidating to me, but now I go right for that. And we talk about what's their money source, because it is an investment either way you look at it. So that is one thing. We all know that probably business is the biggest reason businesses fail is because they're undercapitalized, right? So that part I want my clients to really feel good about, that they have enough capital. And then one other thing that I really is we kind of already talked about it, but really vetting the culture of the franchise organization and talking to those other franchisees that are out there and asking them, would they do this again? How happy are you with the franchise organization? How happy are you with the systems that they have? So really making sure that that's not a step that's skipped, from my client side, and really pushing them to talk to as many franchisees as they can, as long as they're available to talk to them.
What are the myths in the in your space about franchising and your profession that you think you just really want to debunk? There's got to be something out there that just really bugs you that people think in general about franchising.
Well, I think the number one thing is a lot of people immediately with a franchise they do think of McDonald's, French fries, donuts, you know, coffee. There are while there are a lot of restaurant franchises, there are a lot of other types of franchises out there too, and in a lot of different industries. So that's probably the biggest myth is just educating people on what opportunities are out there. And then I think that the second one is that they're expensive, and I'm putting my air quotes around that, right? Because yes, there is a different level of investment when it comes to a franchise because there's an initial franchise fee that has to be paid. There's ongoing royalties that have to be paid. So your P&L in the long term is going to look different. However, if I was going to open let's say a hair cutting place, right? So I'm going to open Jenny's hair cutting place, or I'm going to open a Supercuts, right? All things being equal, the investment level isn't going to be that different if you really think about it. There's going to be that initial franchise fee with the Supercuts, but they probably have a lot of buying power on all of the equipment that goes into those, all the chairs and the scissors and the shampoo. So there's a lot of buying power there. So all things being equal, because of the level that Supercuts advertises and the employees that they employ, if I were to do the same thing, my investment level is going to be relatively the same amount of money as a Supercuts. It's the long term of that paying those royalties that is different for sure. So I think those are probably the two biggest things is, that they're super expensive and that they're just, restaurants.
Now, some franchises, correct me if I'm wrong, but some franchises even have um, a financing option within them to some extent. So, so now you have another additional source of funding. You can fund it yourself. You can fund it through like an SBA loan. I'm pretty sure
Yep.
I'm 90% sure you can buy them with SBA loans, right?
Oh yeah, there's a couple different types of SBA loans depending on the level of investment and the type of business. So there's those funding sources. There's also, this is pretty common for franchises right now. It's called the ROBS program, Rollover for Business Startup, where folks who can utilize their 401k or IRA as an investment into their business. It's a way to do it kind of tax free, penalty free, and using that money. There's some different tax implications to it to where it's not for everyone and shouldn't always be done. But that's a way that a lot of folks are investing in their business is using money that they've already saved up that's theirs so they don't have to borrow. So yeah, there's different funding sources for sure.
Awesome. So, um, I've asked a lot of questions. What have I missed here? So, like, if you were in my shoes, what questions would you have asked?
Gosh. I get asked a lot, what are the most popular franchises? Right? Because, that's what everyone wants to know. What's going to make me the most money? And as far as what's going to make me the most money, that comes in a lot of varieties of shades of how much effort are you putting in, how much investment are you putting into it. So that's up to due diligence with the franchise organization as to how much money you can make, how many locations you might need, whatever that is. So that's but then as far as what ones are the most popular, I wouldn't say there is because of the nature of what I do, where I'm like matching people to the right franchise versus just, hey, what about this one? What about this one? I will tell you that I think there's some industries that are more popular now than maybe ever used to be, or at least it's the trends that I'm seeing. So home services, which we've been talking about, home services is probably, when I first started doing this, home services was the type of industry where people were kind of like, oh, a maid service. I don't know about that. It's not an attractive thing to some people. Where now they were like, heck yeah, everyone needs to get their house clean. They didn't close down during COVID, whatever that is. So I think residential services really has, I'm getting a lot more demand for that. I think also, pet franchises. Pets have also never been more popular. You can't go into a Home Depot without, seeing a couple of different dogs in different shopping carts. So pet industry franchises are very popular. Kids, anything for kids, people will spend as much money, that they can for their kids. So kids businesses are very popular. And I would also say fitness is also a very popular industry because people are very fitness minded and, especially coming out of COVID, health minded, fitness minded. It can, fitness can be something that people can be super passionate about too. So those are kind of some trends that I'm seeing.
Awesome. Are there any franchises out there you think, let me reword this. You know, somebody handed you, I don't know what the number is, $1 million. Somebody handed you $1 million right now and said you can't spend it on anything, but you got to go buy a business and you have to buy the one that makes the most money for you. Just I'm going to expect my money back in, you know, I don't know, 3 years, 5 years, whatever the number is, and you get to keep everything above this. What would you look at? What is the what's out there, man? If you're thinking if I had the money, I'd get one of those too.
Gosh, I think I would diversify, honestly. I would put, my money in a few different kinds because I mean, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So there are several. I think I would go with pets. I'll be honest with you. I think some pet businesses they have the super high growth potential. I think it's actually an underserved market. Think of, pet boarding and doggy daycare. Even though you feel like there's a lot of them out there, it's pretty underserved. So I would do something probably with pets. I probably would also do some sort of service, something that doesn't require me to have a brick and mortar. So some sort of residential, service, whether it's, pool cleaning or painting, something along those lines. So yeah, I would say somewhere, and maybe, a third option being, I also like the beauty space. I came from beauty, and there's people will spend so much money on their beauty, whether it's eyelashes, eyebrows, facials. So I think the beauty space is always something that I would put my dollar on as well.
Yeah, recession be damned. No, no, there's not a woman on this planet that's going to let their eyebrows
Their
connect.
nails grow out. No
The
way.
nails, right?
Yeah.
That's good. There's a segue for us. What I honestly, there's a very good chance we're heading to recession, damn near depression phase here. What there's just I don't think there's anything like I don't really think there's anything such thing as a passive business like passive income. I think everything requires a little bit of work. Even my real
Yep.
estate portfolio requires my assistance. But inside of that, there's not in that same respect. There's not anything out there I think that's recession proof. But
Nope.
there's a lot of industries that are recession resistant. What opportunities do you think right now that'll fare well throughout any upcoming economy?
Well, I think, always services and businesses that are in need no matter what. It doesn't matter the demographics, doesn't matter if there's a recession. So HVAC, plumbing. I think, those are going to be, big ones. Restoration companies. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you get you have mold in your house or you get a leak, you can't skirt that. So I think those are ones that people are going to kind of be highly sought after during kind of a recession time, or just businesses that are super more recession proof, things that aren't going to be a frivolous spend, if you will. So, but there's franchises out there that are for that.
Yeah, so if you think about it, so those would be great. I honestly think that nobody's in this set in sweltering heat; they're going to die, right? Especially the heat wave they're having through the Midwest right now. So if their AC goes up, my buddy actually, a good friend of mine, his name's Tim. He owns a heat and air company. He puts out signs around town when it's hot like that. It says your wife's hot, fix your AC. It has his phone number, right? But it works. People call him there's that side of it, right? Things that are like, I'm going to get this working, whether the economy's good or bad. There's also the passion side of things. I'm looking around at like coffee, right?
Yeah.
People who are passionate about their coffee are going to figure out a way to get their brand of coffee no matter what else goes on. Um, People, it might decline a little bit. Like I said, not recession proof, but recession resistant. Um, I guarantee if you come out with a new bass lure, I don't care what the economy's like, bass fishermen are going to buy it if you can prove it works. There's
Right.
just there's this there's a segment of different industries that are insanely passionate about what they do. Golf, right? Uh, there are people on this planet, no matter what the economy is doing, if they're still taking a breath in and out, they're going to buy the golf balls, and they're insanely loyal, right? They go to the golf shop and they don't have their brand of that the particular item, they'll go to 3 more shops before they
Yeah.
buy something different. So I think there's some space in there that's cushion some safety around it. You can still buy something right now and do that.
Yeah.
With the
I think
economy.
I actually think pets is one that falls into that category. People are extremely passionate about their pets, and if a pet needs to be groomed and they can't do it themselves, that's it's a necessity. Or if they're working and they don't want to leave their dog at home, they need the doggy daycare. So I think pets actually falls into that category as well. You wouldn't think so, but it really does.
It probably does in this fact that people treat like we just right before we moved here to California, our dog passed of being around for 19 and a half years.
Wow.
He just outlived his little half Chihuahua, half Beagle. He was my buddy. Little bitty thing, but he lived a full life. But he was one of the family members. I mean, it literally was one of the family members. So um, uh, people they connect that way, so their animals are just part of their family. So I can believe in any economy. I would say I'd be a little worrisome of luxury items,
Yep.
gourmet pet food, uh, you know, doggy treat bakeries. I'd be a little worried about that because people would refrain and use another product when money's tight, but they're
I
not
think
gonna. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think if you sell gourmet pet food, you need to have another revenue stream. Because people will, I mean, if their dog's diet is sensitive, they will continue to need to buy the, high end pet food.
Right.
But it's better if you also have another revenue stream within the location, whether it's, boarding, daycare, grooming, whatever, washing. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you that some of the luxury things people pull away from. So kind of even within the same business, being a little bit diversified.
Okay. So let's see here. I feel like I'm missing something really cool here. Um, we talked a lot about like what would you ask somebody who's thinking about buying a franchise? Do you help people sell their franchises?
Well, in a way, I do. So yes, there's definitely some what we call resales, franchise resales that
Right.
we bring into our inventory. We know about them because I do quite often have people that I'm working with that are like, I already want an already existing business. It's already cash flowing. I don't want to have to build it from scratch. So I definitely, if we know about those franchise resales, then I can kind of connect the dots there, just like I would any other franchise. They have, a franchise development person that I can connect them with. They're going to vet them. They're then going to introduce them to the owner. So I do in a roundabout way, but most of my clients are going to end up going with a franchise that's, they're going to build from ground up in whatever market that they want it to be in. So yeah, a combination of both. But I have also had franchise organizations come to me, and it's not ones that we normally work with because within FranNet, we're a network of franchises. We don't work with every single franchise for lots of reasons, but if I can help them, I will. Because if I have a client and they're looking for something that I might not have or feel like I have in my inventory, I would much rather they be happy, and I'll give their information to whoever I can that makes sense.
Okay. What's your favorite success story? I mean, you've been doing this for a little while now. So what's your favorite? I did this and now they're flourishing type of success story.
Yeah. So my favorite success story is actually, gosh, I have a couple, but my favorite one is I have a gentleman who he was in the corporate world. He did kind of PR for banking and for different financial institutions and got laid off from his job. That tends to be a common trend in people I work with. They're in a transitional period of time. He lived in Colorado and decided, nope, I want to move down to Florida. But he didn't have a job, and so he knew he didn't actually want to get another job. He realized, through getting laid off, that he just didn't he wanted to control his destiny. So I worked with him. We talked about, took him through my process. He didn't have a ton of money, but he had, a nice, between his severance and then his 401k, he had, a good amount to be sustainable, because we also talked about his lifestyle, like, what do you need to pay your bills? And so turns out he ended up investing in a custom window coverings franchise, which was perfect because it was him solo, and he has a business partner that, so it's just the two of them that are running this business from, their home. And now they, go and help people. In Florida, we have a lot of custom windows. So they help people with figuring out what the best, solution to their window coverings is. And he's thriving. Within the first year of him buying into that business, he expanded into another territory. So that's so fun to see him succeed like that, as somebody who, he never owned a business ever. And but he was able to just, dig right in and doing really well. And he's living the lifestyle that he wants to live. He's able to go on the vacations that he wants to go on to, and he creates his day however he wants it to look, because he can make appointments when it works for him. So I love that aspect of how he got up and running, and that I was able to help him do that.
Awesome. That's great. So, Jenny, how would people reach out to you? We've got your LinkedIn profile for the people who are just listening on the podcast. I want to say that out loud here in a second. But is there any other way you would rather people, like, what's your favorite way for the people to get a hold of you?
Well, I mean, if curious about a little bit more education and kind of the process that I take my clients through, the website, the FranNet website. So FranNet.com. If FranNet.com/my name, Jenny Sutter, you'll get directly to where, a little bit more information on me. So that's great from an educational standpoint. Directly reaching out to me, LinkedIn is a perfect source, because you can, again, kind of see the posts that I put out there, the education I put out there, as well as message me. So that would be another great way for people to contact me.
So that's LinkedIn /n/Jenny-Sutter.
Yep.
So it's
Dash.
dash
Yep.
hyphen, yeah,
Yep.
dash, the dash Sutters. There you go.
Yep.
Just want to know if people can get a hold of you there. Our favorite last question, and we are heading to the top of the hour here. Favorite questions always at the end here is, what can me or my audience do to help you?
Well, I think, just keeping an ear out for anyone who's maybe looking to diversify. They might already own a business, and maybe they don't want to start another business from scratch or buy another business that they have to, kind of, clean up, I guess. So if they're looking for diversification, maybe a franchise is an opportunity to do that, understanding what types of franchises are out there. So just really keeping an ear out for folks who are willing to keep an open mind that a franchise might be an option for them.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the show today. I want to thank you for being here, and we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, hang on just for a second after the show, and that's the show, guys. Hey, it's your host, Ronald Skelton. I want to thank you personally for watching the show today and invite you to call our new hotline, 918-641-4150. That's 918-641-4150. Call us and tell us about our show, ask questions, suggested guests, or even tell me about a business you have for sale, and we'll reach back out to you. Again, that number is 918-641-4150. Call our hotline and leave us some information. Thank you. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind combines the traditional peer-to-peer mastermind introduced first in Napoleon Hill's famous book, Think and Grow Rich, with accountability partnering, where your peers help you ensure that you set goals, take actions, and get results. If you want to scale, blow past roadblocks, and achieve success faster than you might think is possible, I suggest you take a visit over to tiepm.com. That's TIEPM.com. pm.com and check out the Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind.